Welcome to Speaking with Confidence, a podcast that's here to help you unlock the power of effective public speaking. I'm your host, Tim Newman, and I'm excited to take you on a journey to become a better public speaker. Let's welcome our next guests. David Pullan and Sarah Jane McKechnie met in a rehearsal room many years ago and decided that they'd met the person who was going to get them through the 6-month tour that lay ahead. The last 3 decades have been an amazing journey. I don't think either of them expected the extraordinary journey. They've acted with everyone from the Royal Shakespeare Company to Paramount Pictures and in films with Shirley MacLaine. They've even performed for Henry Kissinger and his Secret Service entourage. They've created storytelling shows where they've cooked chicken for the audience and improvised a storytelling course. Now they apply the science, art, and craft of story to the communication challenges that their clients face in industries such as professional and financial services, engineering, pharmaceutical, retail, hospitality, tech, and the public sector. David and Jane founded the StorySpotters with one single aim: to help save great ideas from extinction by giving people the story-based tools to help them survive and thrive. Their book, The DNA of Engagement, is out October 17th, and we'll show you how you can do it too. David and Sarah Jane, welcome to the show, and thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much, Tim. That's a really lovely introduction. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I've been looking forward to this, David, since we connected, through a mutual friend back in June.
Yeah.
And, as we're going to get through today, your book and your system is really a game changer for public speakers and business leaders.
Thank you, Tim. It's lovely to hear the feedback that you've given us already. And it's lovely to hear what we're hearing from people, because we're using it with clients already. It comes out October 17th on Amazon, but we're using it already with clients. And it's just great to hear people saying that it is a system that works for them. So thanks.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for you guys right now. Like you said, you're already using it with your workshops and your business partners. It's coming out in a couple weeks.
Yep.
You're doing a book tour. How much fun is it to be you guys right now? And are you actually able to sit back and
tiring.
Enjoy it?
Well,
it is tiring.
It is tiring. It's a really interesting process, this whole book writing thing, because we were sort of the people who never wanted to write a book, because, who needs another business book? And there was a strange set of circumstances that came about, which led to us writing the book. And there's the writing, and then the whole lead up to the marketing is wow. You sign up for it, you're just not quite 100% sure what you have signed up for, which is, it's like Sarah Jane said, it's both exciting, but you got to have your game face on.
And we're not as young as we used to be.
We're not as young. Look at this. We always think we're like Statler and Waldorf and the Muppets.
Well, what's going to happen though is when it goes on sale on October 17th, understand this doesn't stop.
No,
you have to keep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're going to be doing this for a long time.
Well, funnily enough, the week after the week after launch, we've got 2 trips booked, and we're going to Zurich in Switzerland to see a few people and then we're going to Dublin at the end of the week. So that could be so yeah, you're absolutely right. So I mean, I think sort of a good. Well, actually, a previous guest of yours, Chris Fanning, who you had on the show, I was asking him about this, and he said, David, about 30% of your time is, we're going to become booksellers for the rest of our lives.
For the rest of your lives, yes, it's never going to stop.
Yeah, no. The overarching emotion though is excitement. I think. I mean, we're really proud of ourselves because we've actually managed to get this out, but also it's exciting. It's really exciting.
It's exciting seeing the difference it's making for people. And
it already, we've run workshops recently, and people are they really go with it. They run with it, and they can see how it can completely change the way in which they drive that collaboration in business and the engagement. And that's exactly what we wrote it for, really.
Yeah. And actually for your audience, Tim, I mean, that's an interesting one as well, because, we work at pretty senior level here in the UK and in Europe, but there are various things. And one of the reasons we did it is, how do we help younger people, sort of like in their 20s up to their 30s, who are maybe making that transition from education into the workplace, or getting their I'm going to say their first leadership role, but one of the things we talk about in the book is the fact that everyone is a leader at different points in their lives. Because you might be leading a Fortune 500, but you might also be leading your family on the decision about where you are all going to go on holiday during the summer. So I mean, it's we all take leadership roles at different points in our lives, and seeing the way that the DNA of engagement is really helping in that is thrilling, actually.
Yeah, and especially if we start targeting the younger generations, the college age and young professionals, we could save them 40 years of heartburn.
Oh,
just learning how to interact and talk to people.
Oh,
to be able to
totally
to move things forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's about bringing people together. It's
seeking. It's about seeking that collaboration, I think, and even if you're talking upwards, you're talking to somebody more senior. It's right. Having that courage to allow yourself to be on that level with them within this within that conversation, and be able to take part in it and literally feel that you're collaborating within a conversation rather than just following on. I think
exactly.
Or dictating is, other word. So that's really the fundamentals of it, and it's, oh my gosh, needed. I think so much in this world today, where everything decisions seem to be made quite quickly or without due, often without real understanding about what your audience really needs.
Yeah,
right. Or without thinking about the end user in mind, or really how you're building connections with the people that you're communicating with.
I think that's right. It's interesting. I mean, a number of people introduce us as the storytellers because it's an easy thing to do that. But our name, the StorySpotters, was very carefully chosen because if you go on LinkedIn, you can throw a stick at LinkedIn and there's a million storytellers out there. But I mean, what we're very interested in is how people spot their own stories. But to Sarah Jane's point about collaboration, how do you get people to co-author and spot the stories which are going to drive things forward, which could be on a domestic family level, or it could be on a team level or a corporation level. It's getting one of the quotes the quote we start the book with is by Howard Schultz when he was CEO at Starbucks, saying that if you don't get people engaged, this is me misquoting him, but the gist of the quote is, if you don't get people engaged in the future strategy and get them to co-author that strategy, then you're going to lose great people. So how do you engage people and get them to co-author the story for the future?
Yeah, and if you think about that whole idea there, that started the idea of going and grabbing a coffee and talking, and talking about the partnerships or collaborations or friendships or whatever to move that forward, and that knowing that really kind of makes sense and builds that synergy.
I think you're right. I mean, Tim, you must find this in your work with students at Georgia State and stuff. I mean, none of what we write about is rocket science. I mean, it's how we manage to survive and thrive as a species, because we form groups and we solve problems and we get on with stuff and we make life happen. But too often in those stressful situations, which often corporations are under, or families are under, or a situation where somebody is going for that big job they really want to get to, then all of the things that make us human beings, that ability to connect and really work together, they just fly out the window, mainly because of stress or time constraints. So none of what we've written about is exactly, it's not like we've reinvented the wheel. We just pointed to where the wheel is. If anyone forgets.
It's right over here.
It's here. It's the wheel.
So with your gift of acting, and you knew you could help others, but was there an aha moment where you realized that that you could use your gift of acting and story spotting to be able to help others?
That's yours.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that was many, many moons ago, and we have a son, and after he was about 3, I think, and I thought I can't do this. I was offered a tour, a play to tour around the country, and I thought I can't do it because I didn't want to have that worry of having somebody else looking after him and maybe hiring a nanny or having him in the dressing room. I mean, it was just I'd been in too many situations where other actresses that I'd been working with had that sort of difficulty of never quite knowing, and if your child gets sick, and then oh my gosh. So I decided then that I would try and use my ability, what I knew, which was in a way how to connect with people and
light up
and yes, all those sorts of things. And I joined, and it was at the time in London really when actors were just beginning really to go into business in much more of a professional way to help people communicate and to help people. Initially, it was, I guess, it was doing presentations, but then it kind of expands out from that because it's basically how you actually communicate and how you show up, basically. And so I started working in that field and loved it. I absolutely loved it.
You were very successful.
And then it wasn't long, was it, before you decided that?
Well, yeah. I mean, did I decide or was I pushed?
No, maybe you were pushed. No,
I think Sarah Jane actually Sarah Jane realized that I had a skill for it before I did, and then there was a set of circumstances. I dabbled a bit, but sort of in a less corporate fashion. I was teaching at a drama school, and I created a course for business people. It was like a weekend course called Your Voice is the Business. And it was basically a voice course and about how to use your voice well. But there was one exercise on storytelling that everyone remembered at the end of that course. And a couple of years later, Sarah Jane wasn't well and she had to drop out from what was a very, very big project for us as a family, financially, in terms of what it was going to mean for us as a family. And she rang up the person in charge of the project and said, listen, I can't do this because I'm not well. I'm not going to be able to come and do the gig. And I don't know the exact words, but it was something like this. They said, I imagine it was, do you know anyone who could? And I saw her look at me and go, yes, I think I do. And suddenly I found myself on a plane to the middle of Europe, sort of talking to these people about, it was just after the time of, it was just after the time Enron collapsed. And so there was, so there was the whole Sarbanes-Oxley stuff that came in and, the different regulations around controls in business. And I was going to help a team that were pitching to a massive insurer about some Sarbanes-Oxley compliance work. Me, an actor, going there to this building. Anyway, I flew in there and during the morning, I was listening to these men in suits say words that might have well been ancient Greek. I mean, I had literally not a clue what they were talking about. And at about 10:30, I said, listen, let's stop, have a coffee. Let's see where we got to. Let's have a break, clear our heads. And I ran to the toilet and I called Sarah Jane. And I said, get me out of here. This is a terrible mistake. I have no idea what these people are talking about. And she said, well, if you don't know what they're talking about, they probably don't know what they're talking about either. So do what you always do. Get them to tell a story about what it's going to look and feel like working with them, and that will then earn them the right to talk about their facts and figures and everything. And I went, I could do that. I went in there and I thought, wow, if this is what the game's about, I can do storytelling with people.
Well, I think it's not quite that they didn't know what they were talking about, but
it wasn't clear.
No, but it was the clarity of the story around how they were going to present it to that particular client wasn't clear.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point. So one of the things we talk about in the book is the concept of same paging. You can talk in facts. You know this, Deb, but you can talk in facts and you talk in facts, and everybody hears those facts, and they turn them into a story of what it's going to look like to them. So, I mean, I take your point, but I would imagine that even within that team, until they told the story together about what it's going to look like, they probably had different interpretations.
Completely agree. Yeah.
Story puts people on the same page, which is, everyone leaves going, I get it now. What's it going to look like working with you? And I think that's a really important point for any of your listeners who may be sort of breaking into the world of work or sort of going for that promotion. What's it going to look and feel like working with you? And story, you can't out-fact a story. Stories exist in people's heads. Your CV, your resume isn't going to out-fact that story. You've got to tell the story of what it's going to look and feel like working with you.
And so for young people, I'm working with David, I told you this when we talked before. I'm working with a lady. She's incredibly smart, and she's older than my normal audience. Let's just put it this way. And she has such trouble telling her story. And when I translate this into working with my students and the other people I'm coaching, why do they have such trouble telling their own story? Telling or seeing things as stories.
Do you want to take that?
Well, I think in general people are. Let me see that. There is that feeling if they're going into a situation where they feel that they're a bit of an underdog because they're the ones that are having to impress somebody, that they go in with that kind of feel, then I think that it can lower one's confidence around how you talk about yourself. And so I think there's lots of second guessing about, they won't be interested in that, or they won't be interested in this, or I've got to come over as professional, or I've got to come over I've got to make sure I show them that I know all these. But you see, to me, I don't necessarily think that you have to do that. I think what you have to do is show them who you are by the way in which you explain how you've solved problems before, or whatever is relevant to the conversation.
Key, isn't it?
It is. It's making it relevant to how or what you have. If you're going in for an interview or something, what interests you about why you quite like to work in this kind of situation. Ask questions as the interviewee. Ask questions. You're not. And I think people genuinely think that it's a kind of often when they go into interviews, they think it's a one-way thing that they have to impress in order that somebody. But actually, if you try to impress, I think often the real personality goes, and you start, and it's somebody else that's talking. It's somebody you think that they want to listen to instead of the real you.
I think what I'd add to that as well, Tim, is that people sort of think they get told you should tell a story, but no one wants to hear your story unless there's a point to the story. So actually being very clear about what is it you're trying to prove here. And within the book, we talk about a thing called the PRET structure, which stands for point, reason, example, takeaway. And for the person you're talking about, I mean, there is an example in the book which we've talked about somebody who we did work with, who they were going for a big interview, and the point they wanted to make was that they were a self-starter. They were very happy to get their hands dirty. They really liked solving complex problems. That was the point they made, and they actually put that up in front and said, "So tell me a bit about you." Well, people tell me I'm self-starter. I like solving problems. I'm very happy to get my hands dirty. The R is then the reason, and the reason would be, from everything I've read about you, that's exactly what you're looking for. She then went on to tell the story about how she basically renovated her house totally by using YouTube videos, and she'd done the plumbing and the plastering and the wiring and everything like that. And she told me afterwards that the panel and then the takeaway was basically just to reiterate and say, so listen, I mean, that's basically who I am, and I think it's what you're looking for. And she told me afterwards that the panel in an hour had barely asked her about anything to do with work or her business case for getting the job, because they were too interested in plumbing and plastering and wiring. So, that's what they remembered. Oh, the woman who did the YouTube video. So as long as your story has a very clear point, which is probably something that is going to solve somebody else's problems or needs, then it ties in very much to Sarah Jane's thing. People think I shouldn't tell my story because it's arrogant. But if you're telling your story to serve, to help somebody else's, help them overcome a problem or make a decision they're having a problem making, then your story serves a huge.
It does. And I think as well that it shows whoever you're speaking to so much more of your personality and so much more of what you're made of than if you just if you sort of stick to the CV way of answering.
I think the word show is perfect. It's really show, don't tell, isn't it?
It completely is, yeah.
Yeah. And it builds that interpersonal connection, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It makes you a real person and not an employee or an applicant. You're David. You're Sarah Jane. You're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's there's a friend of ours called David Hutchins who is in Smyrna in Tennessee, I think it is, and he's very big in the story world, and he talks about when he's working with organizations, he talks about geographical feedback, and so the geography of feedback in storytelling. And one of the geographies is what do you infer about the person through what it is they're telling, and if you're telling your own story, then as Sarah Jane says, you can just see it. You can see them light up, and you can actually see the audience leaning in and connecting. And as I said, this panel were very interested in plumbing and plastering and not too interested in accounting for an hour.
So let's take this a step further, because you talk a lot about the art, craft, and science of a story. What does that actually mean? And can you give us an example? Walk us through that kind of process.
I'll do the boring bit. I'll do the science, and we don't. Sorry, anybody's a scientist out there, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can read about the neuroscience of the brain. Of course, that's what neuroscience is. And the way that story affects the brain, and the way it lights up different areas of the brain, and the way that we need to connect. And there are things like slightly outdated theory on triune brain theory about how we need to connect to people. So there is a scientific basis for why to tell a story, but that doesn't tell you how to tell a story, which is really what to do with the art and the craft of it is. And I don't know if you've got any stuff on the art and craft.
The art and craft.
Yeah. It's about the crafting. I mean, okay, so which the craft
bit do you want?
Here's the book.
I know.
The craft is putting your story together, and the art is then telling it. I mean, I don't know.
I think that. Do you want me to go into the?
You go where you want. When have I ever been able to stop you?
I think the thing about story is that you've got to bring the whoever is listening. You've got to bring them into their world. They have to be able to see it. And there's the classic things, that anchor it. First of all, it's really important. You've got to earn the right to tell a story. So you have to make a point. You have to say whatever this is relevant in the conversation. And then you can say, I remember when, blah, blah, blah. And then I think that various things for stories are a time so that people can anchor it in their heads. As soon as you can, last September or yesterday morning or whatever it might be. So there's some kind of connection in that way. And then then you need a place as well, so that somebody, every time you say like a time or a place, what happens is that people will have they might not, if you say, I was in the kitchen, everybody has a kind of image of a kitchen. And so what happens is that the other person's mind is being used because it's a natural thing for us to want to create that picture in our own heads in order to understand. So time and place. And then I think dialogue is important in it. And I remember saying to the old lady on the street, and then you actually do some verbatim, and you've got character, an old lady on the street. I don't know quite what story I'm telling here, but I'm in the kitchen, and there's
an old lady. But I'm fascinated.
There's an old lady on the street.
But she's not there now.
But in the I mean, just an ordinary story of going to the shops. Yesterday, I went to the shops and I was trying to find some tomatoes in the supermarket, and there were absolutely no tomatoes to be had at all. So I thought, well, I'll have to make something else for supper or whatever. And just as I was leaving the supermarket, literally this chap came in through the supermarket doors, and he had about 8 crates of tomatoes on his shopping trolley. And so I said, right, are you selling those? And he said, yes. So I went in and I was able to get my tomatoes. That is the most mundane, boring type of story. But
for somebody who needs a tomato, yes, pretty important.
But the interesting thing is that you still have...
They say tomato.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, but the interesting tomatoes, potatoes, whatever. Hey,
we're good. The whole thing off.
If it's food, I can figure it out. I mean,
we're there with you.
It's sort of a deliberately boring story because of
it lights up the brain.
But it lights up the brain because immediately you have an image of a supermarket, you have an image with somebody with a trolley, you have an image of tomatoes. That's what happens. It makes the brain, and we can't have images of sort of concepts. It's much more difficult. But specific like that, which is why story works.
And to quote Hamilton the musical, it puts you in the room where it happens, which I think is really, it's very important because people relate to it and they remember it. We're fascinated by humans in interacting with each other, which is what the dialogue bit is. But it's the reason, and structurally, so the craft of it, we call this the DNA, and the DNA stands for dream nightmare action in this case, not deoxyribonucleic acid. It's a dream nightmare action. And the reason why we called it that is because we suddenly thought this is a pattern that we live our lives the whole time. We all have it happened literally 20 minutes ago, half an hour ago when we were on this, we had this dream. We're going to talk to Tim on this podcast, and it's going to be really, really lovely. And it's going to be very simple. I've tested everything. That was my dream. It's going to go great. We'll have a really nice time. Nightmare, the volume didn't work. And so we're going, Tim, what are you saying? And it's sort of like, the nightmare that got in the way of the dream was that. And so the action was desperately trying to figure out how to sort this out until, guess what? The volume switched. So, I should turn that up. So this pattern of dream nightmare action is the story that we live in our lives. And it recurs right throughout our lives on a daily, hourly, minute basis, whatever it is. And to tell a story to somebody, to Sarah Jane's point of earning the right to tell a story, you have to connect to their dreams. So back to our woman who was trying to get this job, and sort of say, listen, I was reading your literature and how, what you were doing with the business. It looks like you're really looking for some sort of people who are looking for, who are real self-starters, who really like solving problems. And that's me. Let me tell you about when I did my house just with YouTube videos. And so she's connected to their dream. She's telling her story. She will throw in some nightmares in there of the things that she had to overcome in order to be able to do what she does. Because all good stories are about change. They're all about sort of overcoming something in order to become something else. Otherwise, it's just a string of facts again. And so this dream nightmare action, connect to somebody's dreams, then tell the story about the actions you took that overcame the nightmare in order to achieve that dream. And it's a very powerful model.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
It's what we do naturally all the time in the pub, in a cafe, wherever we are, in a bar with friends. We're constantly telling stories about what's happened to us, and other people's stories trigger you telling a story. Is what makes a lot of our conversation naturally conversation, and that is what binds us. That's what helps us know more about each other and connect with each other, etc. And yet somehow what happens in business, we tend to want to talk in a completely different way, which is totally professional way, which is totally unnatural. And so I think what this DNA of engagement is about really is bringing the human into business, basically, into the way in which into the way that we see what being professional is all about.
I completely, and I think by doing that, it gives people a competitive advantage.
Yes.
Because not enough people are doing that.
Right. And if I'm wrong, that's where you all, really talk about how the DNA, builds trust, drives engagement, and influences change.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the trust word is really big for us, actually, because I mean, too often what happens is people, they go in and they talk about the problem, and then people, without earning back to Sarah Jane's point about earning the permission, you build the trust, you earn the permission by connecting to somebody else and saying, basically, that you've understood them. We all want as human beings is to feel that we've been heard and understood. And so to sort of say, listen, I've heard what your dreams are here and what you're trying to achieve with what you're doing. And that will be great when that all works. But this is what could get in the way of it. So let me tell you about how I can, the butt be the nightmare. I mean, we always say a good story needs a good kick in the butt. So, it's get that butt in there and say, but this could get in the way of it. So let's talk about how, what I could do could actually help you. And that's the action bit. So you've got that dream. Right. You earn the trust by listening and connecting and showing that you've understood somebody's dream.
I think this is I think really showing that you understand is probably the most important thing. That's the foundation of communication, really.
It was one of Stephen Covey's 7 laws. Seek to understand.
Yeah, seek to understand. I think is so important, and it's not, and it's also seek to be understood as well, and the telling a story or about a situation or it can be quite short. Explaining how you feel about something. Within that, you put an emotional. The emotional side through a story, it's much easier to do that. And because you can say, if you're telling a small example about how you've enjoyed doing something before, you can say, I really, really loved doing that because that particular job, I knew that was what I wanted to, you can put your own feelings and emotion. And I think that gives the person that you're speaking to a real understanding about how much you care.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And because I think that so many in business, everybody's working so hard, it's so quick. There's lots of, deadlines, all that kind of thing. And often communication can fall down because people wrap out orders, or they're very sharp with what is necessary to do, and they don't really show how much they care.
Yeah,
they care about the outcome, and they care about the fact that you are comfortable doing whatever they've asked. And I think that this is a story or kind of using story techniques can really help that and smooth that communication well, so that it's good leadership, basically.
There's a wonderful ex-client of ours who's now a friend. I mean, a habit of making clients into friends, which is quite nice, actually. She's called Angela Brav, and she worked for a big global hotel group. She now lives in Atlanta in Georgia, and she's, I think she's doing something with the city of Jacksonville down in Florida, helping the sort of like the regeneration of different building within Jacksonville. But she one of the things that she said that we actually quote in the book was, one of the tasks that she really thought was most important was the ability to be able to read the temperature of the room and then change the temperature of the room. Yeah. And when you read the temperature of the room, that means that you've listened, you've heard, you've understood. And then changing the temperature of the room is about people, when you leave, people thinking, oh, something happened there, didn't it? And that's because of the stories you tell, the emotion you bring to your stories, the way you tell those stories, that people think something happened there, didn't it? And I think that's it's an act of bravery to do that, but boy, oh boy, it works.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Is as you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself, and that takes a special person to be able to be emotionally intelligent enough to be open to listening and put that ego aside. That leader put that ego aside and to be open to listening to the feedback, good, bad, what have you, and be able to conceptually make that change so that, that everybody understands, oh, wow, this person really is listening. This person really does care. And there really is going to be some change or some movement forward, whatever that needs to be.
I mean, that's why, within the book, it's divided into three parts, really. There's the structure of the narrative. The first third is about the structure, how you construct the DNA narrative, which keeps people on track with your message. Then it's about how you tell the stories that support that narrative. But to your point, Tim, probably I think the most important thing is the way that you listen to other people's stories and draw them out of you, because that does, that's a gift. I mean, to actually give people the time and the space where they feel that they can tell you their story and that you wanted to listen to it and you've been changed by that that's a real act of human connection. Yeah.
That's all. I mean, that's what this can do. If you're actually open to doing it, right? Actually open to listening and being vulnerable. As an example, I'm teaching a class this semester that I've never taught before, and it's not that I'm not comfortable teaching. I'm just not, necessarily sure that what I'm doing is teaching what I'm supposed to be teaching. But when I go in and I talk to them, and I say, okay, this is what we're doing, and we're actually talking about presenting and telling stories, and I'm asking them, I say, what is it that I am doing that's connecting with you? And they start listing things off, and I say, okay, now if you see that I'm doing that, when you start talking to people, you have to find your style and how you connect with those people using this framework, and start doing that in everything that you do. And it's not going to happen overnight, but you have to start practicing it and start doing these things for it to take hold.
I think I love that. I mean, because it's this is a human thing that we're talking about. We keep saying that, don't we? I mean, there are, how to win friends and influence people. Stephen Covey. There've been books written about this throughout the ages, but I mean, it isn't a cookie cutter 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, there are steps you can take, and indeed we've written about it, but it has to be authentic to you. And I think that word, how do you make that your own? And I think that word of vulnerability that you use there, Tim, is very well said, because I think that's the daring to. Do you know? We were both actors for many years, as you said right at the beginning, and I always remember one of my teachers saying just before we left, and he said, "Believe you're the best, but believe it sensibly." And I thought, oh, that's great. I mean, it's just like, you've got to have confidence in what you do, but never forget you've got stuff to learn. I mean, the day you forget that, you're done. That's end of game, end of story.
Yeah. So in the, I don't want to give the book away because I want people to buy the book. Right?
I want people to buy the book too. Can we tell you why we want people to buy the book, Tim? Can we actually mention that? Because we want people to buy the book because we want people to buy the book. But we got some really exciting news, which is there's another client/friend who lives in Switzerland, and she is the CEO of a foundation called Be That Girl, which is it's an organization that funds NGOs helping women predominantly in Sub-Saharan Africa lead more self-determined lives, really. And there's one particular NGO in Rwanda called Generation Rise, who have a number of scholars in the tertiary education who are then moving into the world of work and, taking up their first leadership roles, getting their first jobs, really, going back into their communities. And what we've agreed with Otadia, who's the CEO of Be That Girl, is that for every verified Amazon review we get in our first week of sales, we're going to donate an hour of coaching time to those scholars at Generation Rise. So, I mean, apart from anything, you can buy it for 99 cents on Kindle in the first week, and you'll send us out for an hour to coach these young women. And so, one of the that's the thing is, we make a living from storytelling, but there's also I think we've both got to the stage in our lives we want to give something back as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think again, this is just Tim talking here. I think we have a responsibility to be able to give back and to help people, not necessarily change a lot in life, but help them improve or get better. Or in this case, you're doing really, really good and important work.
Thank you, Tim.
Ladies.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I mean, we could get very philosophical about the whole thing, but I know. I mean, our son is sort of like at the back end, was just before the whole sort of smartphone, and everyone had a an iPad and stuff like that, and everyone was on X or Facebook or whatever it was, and so he's grown into that. But there is a generation now that has grown up with it, and I'm always surprised when people say, "Oh, I was just talking to such and such," and no, they weren't. They were on WhatsApp or Telegram or something. I mean, it's so to actually sort of remind people the work that you're doing and the work that we're doing is, these are human skills, which if we're not careful, they will become very, very rusty, those tools that we naturally have. And, again, this is a much bigger debate, but with the rise of AI and all of those sorts of things, the thing that will keep us relevant as human beings is maintaining and developing those very human skills of connection.
Yes. And, it's so important. I was just talking about this. We didn't have cell phones growing up. When I was a kid, there was no cell phones. There was no pagers. There was the only phone that you had was the landline. I remember having to, where you put your finger in and do the number. And if you messed up, you had to start all over. You get to the last time you messed up, you have to start all over again. And when you wanted to talk to somebody, you actually had to talk to them.
Yeah.
And now, and I catch myself sometimes too, saying I talk to somebody when I just send them a text, and I say, no, I texted them. And this is what they said. And there's so much that gets lost in this digital communication, tone, inflection, attitude, facial expressions. And so we don't know we don't truly know what is meant when we're communicating in that manner. And it's so important to have that face-to-face or that interpersonal connection to truly learn and understand from other people.
Yeah, everything's fast now, isn't it? It's fast food. We don't sit down and have meals together. We don't sit around and share those stories. I mean, it's and as a result, to your point there, I mean, everything is therefore open to interpretation. And again, people are telling their own story about what it is they hear rather than really knowing what the true story is. It's, I mean, it's, we at the end of the book, we talk about the ethics of storytelling, and there's just about sort of like really thinking, because these are powerful tools, and, very powerful tools. And, we have to be very clear about why we're doing what we're doing. And are we doing it for the good, or are we sort of trying to, manipulate in some shape or form? So, I mean, it's a very human and very powerful set of skills we're talking about here. They're not, they always get called the soft skills. They're not soft.
No.
Yeah.
No. And it's, in the book, you tell a story about a nightmare scenario when you're cooking a brisket, and things like that they transcend continents, right? I knew exactly what you were talking about. I knew exactly. Myself, I've been there. I've done that.
I'm sure your brisket's very good.
People are coming over. They're going to be here soon. What are we going to do?
Right? I know.
And
that's the nightmare. What do I do?
Mm-hmm. It is. What are you going to do? And I'm not going to tell the solution, but it was perfect. It turned out well. Of course it did.
Yeah.
And you there's a number of great stories in the book, a number of them. And that one stands out. And again, I don't want to give the book away, but the theme of Jaws is perfect. And I actually used that last night when I was talking to my wife.
Yeah.
We were talking about the and, but therefore. And I said, if Brody had just done that, Jaws would have been 5 minutes in and out.
Yeah.
We love that. Steven Spielberg would be a janitor.
Exactly. And then the other story that really stood out is the story about George, the rugby official referee. And again, I don't want to give these stories away, but great. I mean, and I come from a sport background, so that was another one that I'm really leaning into. And I played rugby, and it was like, yeah,
okay,
I know, there's that connection.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that you can't put all the good stories in the book.
You can't, no. It'd be a very long book.
Exactly. What were some other ones that were on the list but didn't quite make the cut?
I think there's one that I often tell about a client. So historically, we've applied our work to big corporations who are trying to pitch for work. So it might be one of the big four pitching for an audit for a global client, or a consultancy firm trying to win some work. And of course, that's a lot of fact-based. And so what our job really is to help them get those facts into context and find the stories that bring the facts to life. And one of the things that we often talk about is what's the thing you're going to leave behind in the room? And, what's the last thing you're going to say that's going to make people remember you? And I was working with a team in South Africa who were pitching to work with a big bank. And the lead partner who was on this thing, they said, listen, is there anything you want to say before you leave the room? And we worked on this story because he told it to me. I said, this is a brilliant story. And he said, basically, it's a story about when he was in London and he went to Jermyn Street, which is where all of the big tailor-made suits get made and everything. And he went in there and he'd ordered these suits, and he went up to the counter to pay for them, and he handed over his credit card. And the machine just started smoking. He was completely out. I mean, he was out of money, and it was really embarrassing because he was in a very high-class establishment, and he was a man of, means. And so, hang on, what do you mean my credit card isn't working? And so he rang up the office in South Africa, and he said to him, listen, I'm in this terrible situation. I'm trying to pay for these suits, and my credit card I must have maxed it out because, we've been traveling a lot, and I just maybe haven't paid in enough already to clear it. And the woman was very calm, and she said, yes, I understand, sir. Yeah. Listen, how much do you need? And he said, well, about £5,000 would cover it. And he said, when will you be back in Johannesburg? He said, I'll be back next week. Listen, just sort it out then. It'll be absolutely fine. And he told this story, and they went through, and he gave his credit card over, and it was paid and everything. And he told that story. And then at the end, he said, what really impressed me about that woman who worked for you, because it was the credit card of the bank that he was pitching to work with. He said, I just love the way that she listened to me, and she was just really pragmatic, and she wanted to solve the problems that I had, and she didn't get flustered and everything. And he said, what I want you to remember is that woman, and remember that that's what I want to give to you when I'm working with you. Thanks very much. We look forward to the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And a little, wow. About a week later, they rang up and said, all right, let's talk fees. And they ended up getting the piece of work. But it was just a really personal, we've all been in a situation, maybe not buying high-end suits, but we've all been thinking, where am I going to get the money from this? And, suddenly something happens. It's a problem that's overcome. And it's just a story which when I heard him tell me that one, I thought, you got to use that. You got to use it.
And you don't really see that kind of service all the time either. So to see that it was seen and acknowledged and appreciated.
Exactly right. And if he just left and said, if they'd said, listen, is there anything you want to end on? He said, yes, I want to listen to you and serve you and solve your problems pragmatically. That's a list. Who's going to remember that? But putting putting those, those skills, those values, those behaviors into a story, especially one that he'd observed their people doing, made it, it was really powerful. I'm not saying it won the pitch, but certainly helped.
I'm sure it helped. Yeah. So is there anything else that we haven't talked about today that you think our listeners should know about?
When are we coming for your brisket, Tim?
Oh, boy. Honestly, the best time for that is probably May or June. Okay.
It's a date. It's going in the diary straight off. The calendar. I'm told I'm not allowed to say diary. A friend of mine actually a guy called John Kleck, who's a retired Navy SEAL. He always laughs when I say, who writes at the beginning of the book. He, whenever I say, I'll put something in the diary, he says, what are you, a 15-year-old girl? He said, it's a calendar.
And that's what a SEAL would say.
Yes, exactly right. He's a very funny man. He's also a stand-up comedian. He's a great guy. He wrote a little foreword for us, didn't he?
Yeah.
And when I read the foreword, I said, John, am I seriously allowed to put this in the book? He said, yeah, because I mean it. That's what I said. I said, if I put that in, I'm going to have to get Bradley Cooper to play me. If this book gets optioned, Bradley Cooper's going to have to play me because you make me sound a lot better than I am.
I think going back to the sort of message, I think that I want to reiterate really for the people that will be listening to this, is that, you know, when you go out into the world of work and you're interviewing and deciding, you know, where you want to go, and interviews can be really, I think they can be horrible, really. I mean, it's the lead up to an interview, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That is often the worst, and you're thinking, oh, you know, what do I say? And I think that one of the most important things is be, you know, really think about why you want to do whatever you're going up. What is the job that you're doing? Why do you want to do it? And think it's more emotion. Think about emotionally, why do you want to do it? What does it mean to you? And then think about the when you're thinking about that, is there a story that you think that will support that?
Demonstrate your behaviors.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Because I think people come out of university or whatever, and they've got, you know, all their qualifications and everything. But what is it about you as a person that they're really going to go, I like you because I like what you've said? And the best way of getting that over to somebody is by telling a story about something that shows your values.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that I would think is probably, you know,
it creates that psychological safety and intimacy where people feel they've got to know you. It's back to your worded vulnerability, Tim.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to give your experience, as long as your experience is proving the point that you're there. You are there to serve. You are there to serve and to help.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we have to do a better job in helping, you know, young people and young professionals getting to that point and teaching them how to figure out who they are and what their values are and what qualities that they have and what they want to be.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion and experience that right now, young people and young professionals haven't really given that a lot of thought.
Yeah.
They just kind of, okay, you know, I grew up, I go to school, you know, you go to high school, then you go to college, and then you get a job, but we don't really do a whole lot to help them figure out who they are and what they really think.
I think that's and life just sort of happens to people, but you can be a bit more. You can be a bit more intentional about it,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great way to do that.
Yeah,
you know, with the DNA of engagement, and because you do have to start thinking about other things and how to communicate, you know, in a way that builds that trust and engagement. So
exactly, you start by thinking about the other person and their dreams, and then connect what you do to helping them solve the nightmares through the actions that you take. And it's we're loving how it's being received, and you know, the work that you're doing, Tim, is exactly in the same area, and I think it's important work.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all spending some time with me this morning. I know this is probably one of the busiest times of your life, and I'm so excited for you. It's
thank you.
I follow you. Yeah, I low key follow you. This is what the kids call it these days. I low key follow you. You know, on LinkedIn and those types of things. And I am so excited for you because this is a great time, and I hope that, you know, you can take some time to enjoy this. Even though as busy as you are, because it's a great accomplishment, and what you're talking about, what you're doing is going to change people's lives.
Thank you so much, Tim. Really, really appreciate it. And I have to say, this has been a I don't know how long we've been talking for, but this has felt like a bit of a holiday. It was, to be able to spend some time and just swap some stories with you.
Well, David, not many people would say that. Trust me. Spending an hour with Tim is not necessarily.
You had me a brisket, Tim. You had me a brisket.
So where can people find you, and where can they buy the book?
The book will be out on Amazon, on Amazon in all countries on October the 17th, Thursday, October the 17th. It's live. You can already, we are the StorySpotters at StorySpotters.com. The book has its website already, which is called the DNA of Engagement.com. So you can find out more about the book there. And then probably the best place to get in touch with both of us is on LinkedIn. Please do follow us there or reach out and connect with us, because we love meeting new people.
And you share a lot of great information on LinkedIn as well. So I want people to understand that. It's not just necessarily about the book, but some of the other information that you're sharing with some of the things that other people are doing as well. Because again, that's what we do. We help other people. It's amazing.
Exactly.
Some of the things that you're sharing, and just for our listeners, just so that you understand, you and I got connected through like say Chris Venning, who isn't, even though what we do isn't rocket science, is an actual rocket scientist.
Yes, he is. That's true.
Which is great. But again, you can find so much good information by following different people, and David and Sarah Jane, you all are some of the best sharers of information that I've seen in a long time.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Really, thank you. That's all I have to say.
Well, again, thanks so much for spending some time with us, and I'll obviously be in touch, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Tim, and good luck to everyone out there.
Yes. Bye.
I'll take care.
Bye-bye.
Be sure to visit Speaking with Confidence podcast to join our growing community and register for the Formula for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.